Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
And I am Mike Forrester. Adam, we are wrapping up what might be one of the most eventful few weeks in recent Star Warsing.
I agree.
Good. And the reason I sound crusty is we spent a lot of time in the movie theaters the last couple of days, and I have to say that it is still one of my favorite experiences. Sitting there, eating popcorn, completely stoking out of what you're watching, and we've seen it 3 times.
I've seen it four times. Four as of today. So
most impressive.
So since it's just Mike and me, we're going to do sort of immediate reactions. We're not going to get too deep. There's a lot to talk about before we get into a deep dive next week, so let's do that right now. Well, since you saw it first, you go first.
Okay, sounds good. So immediately coming out of the theater, I'm having an incredible experience at the world premiere. The actors are sitting next to us. You're watching this. People are cheering for every name that pops up because there's a good chance that person's in the audience. But really, what we got was kind of I would say probably the most excited crowd that we're going to see in terms of all the jokes. Everyone's going to make sure to really laugh at those things. The different, of course, when Din, I could bring in warm. When he says that, I could bring in cold. Everybody cheers. Like, so like this is literally like, Luke saying, may the force be with you. Obi-Wan saying hello there is almost a meme at this point. And
so that feeling about this, et cetera.
Right. So at this point, it's a fun experience because the energy is high. Walking out of the movie, the story felt thin to me, an immediate reaction. I was like a little bit, I think, checking my own expectations of going, and I have talked about this with other people, the Avengersification of post-credit scene, double post-credit scene, little cookie crumb here, and can you believe this, and blah blah blah, like all this stuff where it makes it be like, is everything connected, is there, and that's where Star Wars has always done a good job of maintaining a story timeline, but not necessarily leading it in the way that Avengers is like, guess what, this next Glup Shitto's coming and he's going to change so all of that I think is my own existence within this modern pop culture. Everything has to be a giant franchise of the way that the studios are pushing stuff. So if
cultural bias, cultural expectations,
100%. So I walked out being like, man, and of course it's also difficult because Katie Sackhoff walks by and I'm like, oh my God, Bo-Katan's in the movie. And then, like the amount of actors that Timothy Olyphant walks by and I'm like, wow, what a handsome guy. But second, oh my God, Cobb Vanth's in the show, so like, it was hard for me to kind of get my expectations up because I literally see all of these people here. Come to find out, of course, that Favreau just invites everyone from the Mandoverse and they all show up. It's really fun. I was actually thinking about it from a perspective of going, if you brought your kid to see this experience for the first time, a Star Wars movie in theater, and this might be their first interaction into Mando Grogu, you really didn't need to know that much about they did a good job just kind of throwing you into the, even if you didn't know a whole lot of backstory. Emily, for instance, hasn't watched barely any of the Mandalorian. This is our friend Ryan's girlfriend. And she was like, that was awesome. I've never seen Mandalorian, but that was awesome. So like, it's interesting to hear that perspective because now you can go, did you like kids? Did you like that? Well, guess what? If we sign up for Disney Plus, trademark, you got 3 seasons of adventuring. So it's almost like the reverse of how you could experience storytelling in some ways. So being like, treat the show as your prequels of how we got to this point.
Absolutely. I'll give my thoughts about the story as well right here. Like I said in that reel, I was so tired and I was actually just really annoyed with myself for my OCD, forcing you to go to damn Green Bay. I got up at 5 a.m., didn't see the movie until, 16 hours later?
Sure, yeah.
Almost 17 hours later.
Yeah.
So I was so tired. 5 minutes in, I could barely keep my eyes open because I was, stuffing my face with popcorn or whatever.
And we're lounging. We're in the lounge section.
All the way back. It's 100%. Dark as hell. Like, it was sleepy time, man. So, like, keeping up with this 4-5-act story, which is something we'll talk about in a second, instead of just a very simple right-in-your-face 3-act structure, was kind of tough. Like every 15 minutes I go, oh, now another thing? Oh, wait, the other guy, where was, you know? So
Yeah.
I left being
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I like that.
Sure.
And also, you combine that with the way we, being lifelong fans, a lot of the fandom deals with this. I think you go in on like pins and needles, just worried to death if they're going to get it right, whether or not you want to feel that way.
It is exhausting
Yeah,
watching Star Wars.
expectations are
Yeah.
just absurd.
Yeah.
So you overanalyze everything. Everything is under a microscope. And second viewing was a little better, but still, I got maybe 7 hours sleep, which isn't enough for me, like my weird old body. So it was a little better the second time, but I was still like, kind of this. There's a lot in this story. This really feels like half a season turned into a movie.
Right.
Third time was much better. I really liked it the third time, and today I completely loved it. Completely loved it. And I understand the structure more now. It is, like I said, not this kind of standard, just caveman simple 3-act structure that everybody insists on in this, blockbuster world where every movie-going experience has to be a giant event. I don't think the 5-act structure, it's 4 or 5, I don't know, there's a lot of like subjectivity or just like arbitrary drawing of lines between those acts, but a more traditional quote 5-act structure that is older in a lot of ways than the 3-act structure, in the days of in other media, it could be in plays, it could be in other things. I don't think modern audiences take as well to that unless it's in a serialized television series type of format. In a movie, it's kind of like, it can seem crowded or clumsy writing, even if it was absolutely on purpose. So you have to wonder how honest Favreau is being about this being a brand new story. I mean, you could have written the story from scratch as a 5-act structure, but I also think it's very possible that he has as much stuff in his notes, he and Filoni both, as George Lucas ever did. And they're as honest as George Lucas ever was about how it all comes together, like we are as musicians about any album or any song or whatever. This could absolutely have been 4 episodes of TV.
Correct. And I think it's a wonderfully simple story in the direct rejection of how everything needs to be overly complicated. And I said walking out of the movie, I said this movie was a love letter to all of the references that have inspired Jon Favreau, almost to a fault in some ways, because it's a love letter to ILM. It's about like the amount of puppetry and animatronics and creature shopping that they did in this movie is quite insane in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
And that is such a tribute to the amount of teams that actually bring things to life the same way that they did in, the 1977 all the way to 1983 before George really wanted to explore new technology. But then when you talk about new technology, sure, there's parts where you're like, yeah, sure, I can see it. This is CGI, but like the dragon snake entire sequence in the water and with the Amani and all these things, like incredible.
Unbelievable. I can't wait to see the VFX breakdown.
100%, because like it was done so well. Water has been traditionally very hard to do in a convincing way, and the whole scene is basically in water.
Yeah, it's like Avatar: The Way of Water was like Tony Hawk doing a 900, and now every other VFX house is like, we're doing water and it's gonna rip, and we're doing water too, and they did it. They absolutely landed it on this in ways that like I was looking for the seams, like squinting, trying to find where it was comped together. I mean, I was doing the same thing with the miniatures and the stop motion stuff. All this stuff is stitched together in such incredible ways because I think ultimately the visual effects and special effects, traditional and modern in this movie, is an absolute tour de force of movie magic.
And every era of Industrial Light and Magic.
Every era.
Right. And so I think when you look at like how the Tippett, Guardian droids, right, the sentries, could have been rendered quote unquote better.
Right.
But they left them in as stop motion style. It was, and then Din's running in front of them. So they composited together. It really was awesome in that sense. You have the Favreau's love of Kurosawa multiple shots here were almost like Tarantino levels of stealing in terms of like
Yeah.
the blocking, the sounds, the motive, you know, all of it was just very from my perspective, I'm like, this is what Jon Favreau set out to do, was remind people that movie magic still exists.
Yeah.
And it was really successful in that way. And with some criticisms too, some of the dialogue was a little clunky from, you know, it was kind of a lot of, you know, we've talked about this. Does the new generation need things literally spelled out for them because they're not paying attention? They're on their phone half the time. It almost kind of seemed like Sigourney just basically like gave the whole thing up. Like right in the beginning, it was like, hey, good job. You took out the Imperial warlord, who's an illegal criminal, by the way.
Yeah.
Also, we need you to go find this guy who's a complete mystery. Is he? You want to take
Right.
the job? You're not going to take the job. And then Din gets in the new Razor Crest and, you know, Zeb, you haven't said no yet. And then all of a sudden they're just going, you know, it feels definitely more like a show than it does like the, you know, the epic Shakespearean romance that we've known some Star Wars to be. And especially coming off the new gold standard of Andor, which is completely different, but it definitely leaves an imprint on people's brains when they think of Star Wars now.
I think Favreau's style of dialogue is the closest to George's, I think, out of anyone who's written for Star Wars, including anything in Clone Wars. I know there have been a lot of writers on The Mandalorian, but, you know, Favreau set the tone. He wrote the majority in terms of like setting the bar at the beginning. And it is the closest to George's style when George is writing mostly on his own. A lot of people don't know that a lot of the original trilogy, well, I mean, people do know that Lawrence Kasdan wrote, you know, Empire and Return of the Jedi, but people don't know about all the ghostwriters on A New Hope, you know?
Right.
All of the humor, everything that has a lot more wit, that was other people punching up the dialogue. So when Lucas is writing completely on his own with the prequels, Favreau, I feel like he writes like prequels plus, you know?
Sure.
Like prequels enhanced, you know? It's got that very like formal kind of tone to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be, especially when it's as sparse as this is, I feel like this was a very dialogue sparse movie.
Completely agree.
I mean, even aside from all of like, you know, a 25-minute puppet stretch with hardly any English dialogue.
Right.
Even when the humans were on screen, very dialogue sparse. And I think that is also purposeful in a way, you know, kind of inspired by Kurosawa movies and Westerns where people were just, you know, a man of few words walks in the frame with a gun on his hip and a tumbleweed goes by. You know, that's the vibe.
Yeah.
So I get it. But yeah, so I can see how people can have trouble with that. I did as well at times. But when you step back and you see it for what it is rather than what you expect it to be, it's a much better experience. And that's where I am now after my fourth viewing, after listening to some other podcasts, you know, reading some things and doing what we do on this podcast called Thank the Maker.
Right.
Where we try to give the creator the benefit of the doubt and see what their creative vision is rather than just going off that knee-jerk emotional reaction because we're in so deep. Like the coolest artistic experience are like when, you know this, like you get an album that at first you're like, I don't know about this one. And then a year later, you're like, this is my shit. This is the best album this band's put out in 15 years, you know? I like to approach all new Star Wars from that same kind of frame of mind.
Yeah, and I think from, you know, the perspective, we've also had a lot of Star Wars since A New Hope. And so when you think of like terms like, you know, get this walking carpet out of my way, which very much fits Princess Leia and her tone. But then it's kind of one of those things where like we look at it, we're like, there's carpet in Star Wars? Like there's, you know what I mean? But then when you think about it, like I was kind of comparing it to like, you know, Rada being like, I'm my own man. But it's like, he's definitely not a man. So like, would you have changed the dialogue to say, I'm my own hut, I'm my own being, you know, like these are just those little things that I remember being like, tonally, it doesn't throw anything off, but it's one of those
also,
things.
He's speaking English, which is not his native language. So whatever man translates to in Huttese.
Yeah. And then, you know, with both of and it could work. Absolutely. But it's kind of one of those things where you look at the dialogue and you go, are these things that we would have, are we nitpicking these at this point? Or is this a very Star Wars level of, you know, we're going to dive real deep into we're all of our slang is going to have funny words. We're going to be singing like a yuzum,
Mhm.
doing that kind of stuff. The dank ferrix of the world, the Stifling calling the quack to slimy, whatever these things are, is very human dialogue, Earth dialogue, American dialogue slapped into a galaxy far, far away. So, in some of those instances, we just kind of have to let those things go. But definitely in regards, I don't think I've seen too many takes that I like completely disagree with. There's nothing that I haven't seen that I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But what I am really encouraged by is that people have been really shouting out how many people worked on this, because it is hard to view it from just a strictly story standpoint
Mhm.
because of how much went into making this movie, that it's hard for me to not look at it as a tremendous success coming out of the largest production in California ever. All of these people that have contributed to it, the love, the care, the amount of people who are like, I grew up a fan of Star Wars, got me into making movies, and now I got to work on this. Like that, it's hard for me to look at it and go, oh, the movie is, it's a 6 out of 10 or seven. I'm like, I can't. It's almost like hard to view it that way because there's
Yeah.
too much. We're too far in.
The most I can do in good faith and good conscience is place it in my ranking of Star Wars films by my by how much I like them, not how much not by quality, because who the fuck am I
Sure.
to try to declare that? So yeah, I'll put it in. I already put it in my notes list in
Yeah.
my phone where it stands currently. And when I did that, I moved some things around. So
But this is the hard part of going quality. Like what does that mean to us at this point?
exactly,
Because like VFX, sure, you can
incredible.
say whatever you want about the story, but the VFX,
Dude, and I'm sorry, anyone dogging the VFX, like I heard some people kind of complaining about the Dejarik match in the arena. Anyone who loves the puppetry and is going to complain about the VFX, I understand that the puppets are physical things in the real world, but that doesn't mean they look real. You've just decided that a puppet can be accepted as a living being with agency and that a digital character can't.
right,
That's a bias
right.
because Rada looks incredible.
Insane. So
Like,
good.
unbelievable.
And rendered in multiple different lighting scenarios. Like, that
Yeah.
would like not that long ago, that would have been a character that would have been like only in the dark. You
Yes.
know?
I mean, so many of the different creatures look absolutely incredible, and it's also tough sometimes because we don't know what certain things look like in real life. And even like, an alien with blue skin or something, for example, we don't know what a blue-skinned creature really looks like, a humanoid creature. All we know is a human with face paint on. So when we see one actually rendered for real with all of the same photorealistic tools that you would use to create a CG human that will fool people, it's like, "Oh, that looks weird. That doesn't look right." It's like, well, what does look like what's your ground truth that you
Right.
can reference? Like, how many blue skin people do you know, for example? So, that
Right.
stuff applies to, like, a big fleshy snake or that, like, jellyish blue creature in the Dejarik match.
Right.
All of those things are photoreal. Any of the weird stuff could be animation, it could be stuff that doesn't quite move right in our brains,
Yeah.
kinda flag it, but, I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah,
All of it,
truly, like a
unbelievable.
huge, huge, huge shout out and congratulations to ILM for doing that. I mean, I'm still that is the part that I think is the most exciting. I love seeing Brendan and Lateef get top billing right
Yep.
behind Pedro. I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it was, the funny part, I'm gonna write a post about this, but there, with all the marketing that has been going on for this movie, you have seen multiple Mandos from different people just doing promotional stuff. He's at WWE wrestling. He's,
Mhm.
he's over here doing this soccer game. He's at the FIFA World Cup, like all this like Disney associated stuff. You have seen a lot of people wearing the Mandalorian's armor. But when you see Brendan Wayne walk in like an absolute cowboy, you're like, bro, I know. I was wearing the costume this weekend, kind of looking at myself in the mirror to be like, he always say like, talk, you got to walk with your hips. And I'd be like, what does that mean? Like, I think my legs are the things that are walking.
Yeah.
But, like, I understood what he was saying, where it's almost like you kinda gotta, like you gotta have that swagger when you
You gotta
walk, that
saunter.
almost yeah, 100%. And then Lateef, just, oh my gosh, like, in terms of this is the most physical we've ever seen Mando.
Incredible martial artist, dude.
The opening scene, Lateef, Crowder, Dos Santos, my gosh, dude. Just a force to be reckoned with in terms of, we got to see all of Mando's tools. We didn't get to see a lot of jetpack besides them using it exactly for a flight device, the Rising Phoenix. But like, I've never seen him use his flamethrower as much.
I haven't seen him kick that much, like
Right,
like
just
the legit
drop kick,
martial
yeah.
arts, like in the front of Coin's bar, pet shop, kind of whatever
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Some of that fighting was like I thought it felt like I was watching John Wick or
Yeah,
something for a
true.
second.
Yeah, very much, very much. So I thought that was amazing seeing those guys. And then, of course, like, anytime we see X-Wings, we'll save our drop. We got a lot of details.
Yeah.
It really is a feast, I think, for a lot of people who there's plenty of references. And I think that's where when
Yeah.
people were like, oh, I don't know, there's, it doesn't seem like it's really connected to anything. I'm like, actually, the implications of the story are actually pretty wild.
Yeah.
But you're viewing it from this one little moment. You don't think about the butterfly effect that happens after the twins get removed from their place of power. And so it's very interesting. And I think, like on the critical side of things, I thought Coin was a very fun character, but like his, just changing your name and kind of disappearing into becoming a warlord on another planet didn't seem like it was the ace of staves that I was hoping for. But I guess in some point, like it's hard for me to not know everything that we know about Star Wars and not think, was the Ace of Staves a Thrawn tie-in? Was it someone who's, was it Captain Paleon? Like who immediately our Star Wars brains turn on and we're like, who could it be? Coin is a front for actually someone. And then it turns out to just be him. And he was like, oh, I've been running this underground fighting ring. I mean, you got me.
Who knows? Season 4 could completely repeal that and say, exactly what you're saying. He could have been there could be a shadow lord behind him,
Right,
but
right.
I do not disagree with the idea that he wasn't quite as intimidating as you would expect,
Right.
especially when the bar is set in episode 1 of this entire franchise by
the Client, Moff Gideon, all of
Client.
those. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that performance.
Right.
Crazy.
Right.
An accent goes a long way. Last thing we'll say, because we need to wrap up. We're going much longer than we planned on. The credits, actually rolling credits at the top of the movie, starting without an opening crawl, like Kathleen Kennedy promised all theatrical releases would have going forward. The credits were really uncomfortable to me at first, because we've never seen that in Star Wars. Did that bump you as much as it did me?
I mean, I think because we've seen so much of how The Mandalorian starts, I knew that we were in a Mandalorian specific project, right? I think there was a part of me that did feel when they did the stacked logo, The Mandalorian, dun, 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 right? And then it hits with the second and Grogu. The audience cheered, of course, in the first viewing, but like, I thought that was interesting how they handled that. But I personally, I kind of feel like I know that from a marketing perspective, you're like these, what do we call them? The movies, the anthology films or whatever, those. I can understand why they wouldn't do an opening crawl with Star Wars. But like for me, I'm like, at this point, it's all, if it can interact with a mainline story, it should have the opening crawl.
Yeah. And I understand that the score, it would be tough because we've never heard that fanfare with The Mandalorian, and it could seem out of place. And I bet they wrestled with that. I'm sure they tried it. I'm sure Ludwig did a pass, coming out of that into or something, and it might have felt weird. Also, no, opening on a shot in space and tilting down. I kept imagining in my head that night after the movie, falling asleep, how they could have done that. Could he be, arriving in a ship coming in from orbit? I don't know. But on the fourth viewing, totally fine. I didn't even think about it. They rolled the credits and I'm like, oh, I'm watching a Western. Credits, of course. The only thing was seeing the cast. When I saw Martin Scorsese, as soon as I heard that character's voice, we would have recognized it regardless, but it was immediate. It's like, oh, there he is. Bam. Which we're not used to doing in Star Wars. We're used to seeing the credits at the end.
Yeah, and I also think this like kind of Frutiger font that they're using was, from my design, I'm like a little underwhelming.
Like that's a little bit of like a watching it on your phone font choice.
Yeah, it's like Franklin Gothic or whatever the actual font is, and I was just kind of like, okay, this was a choice. So, and these are just like knick-knack things. It's like most people don't even know the credits are there, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
Because they're watching all this amazing Adelphi bass with this like kind of Top Gun intro, very, space fighter jet, very, very, very
Jill
wet.
leans over and goes, "Who's the Top Gun fan?" Immediately.
That tracks. Yeah, absolutely. So, so some of those choices were interesting, but I think for the most part, I missed the crawl. I thought it was fine because Mando has such an iconic theme at this point.
Right.
But the part of it goes, especially with the voice. Did you happen to watch The Bear, Shameless, any of that?
I've seen nothing with Jeremy Allen White at all. So,
Okay, so
that was good for me, I think.
Yeah, I think so, because like I was actually surprised at how much they didn't change his voice.
Yeah.
They certainly gave it more of an echo to kind of, model after a, set of 500-pound lungs. But yeah, it was interesting. Being a fan of The Bear, the way that he talks he does have a very particular cadence. And that really came through in Round of the Hut. So it took me out a little bit to be like, okay, cool, we're here. And especially when, you wonder those questions like that and go, is that a billing thing? Because Jeremy Allen White, for the most part, like Rada has a big role in the movie. It was interesting how little he's shown publicity for the movie.
Yeah, I have a feeling Favreau is just a huge fan and said, I got to put this dude in my movie.
Yeah, and he's done that before. That's why there's WWF people and other people that have just been brought in for some reason. So, I mean, Star Wars is back in theaters. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to a deep dive because the more I watched it, the more I was like, there's a lot of great stuff in here.
Well, let's wrap up. Patrons, we'll talk a little bit longer with you for the bonus segment. We'll just go back through these comments because patrons have been chatting it up, and there's some stuff to talk about here. Everybody else, thanks for joining us. We'll see everyone next week for the deep dive, and expect much more Mandalorian and Grogu content coming in the coming weeks. Until then, may the Force be with you. Thank the Maker is produced by Adam Russell and Jason Chiodo, and edited by Jason Chiodo. If you enjoy the podcast, you can support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, and more. Our patrons literally make Thank the Maker possible.